Hello, no holds barred Witchcraft fans. You must be a fan if you're listening to us. Because this is the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast. And every week my intro gets slightly more creepy. So, Chris, do you have any strings to hold you down? Will you be going all the way on this podcast? Because this podcast episode, continuing along the secret occult crap within like Disney and stuff series that we're talking about Pinocchio.
Yeah. And that's not what the episode's called, by the way.
Not a real boy.
That's the one.
Am I a real boy?
Well.
Not until oh no, that's a man, isn't it? I was going to say not until your voice drops, but that's a man. Am I a real boy? You are now. Well done, my son.
Aww. But yeah, so the whole idea is we were going to try and cover some of the occulty kind of practices in the back of? That sounds really bad. In the undertones of Disney, or not so undertones, blatantly obvious in some of the Disney shows. So we've done... what did we do? Snow White.
We did Snow White.
So this time's Pinocchio.
So what do you want to talk about when it comes to Pinocchio? Because we'll squeeze a little bit of magical practice in with it.
I'm sure. Well, I suppose the obvious one is talking about what Pinocchio is. So Pinocchio, a wooden puppet who comes alive thanks to some blue fairy. It already sounds like a bad trip, doesn't it?
I always get my blue fairy mixed up with my green fairy.
Oh, okay. I think you should have that looked at.
It went blue and then it went green.
I think you should have it checked.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, like the blue fairy, green fairy's absinthe. Blue fairy's the sweet one that makes him a real boy.
So do you want to go over quickly the storyline, or are we just going to assume everyone knows the story of Pinocchio?
I suppose we can. How would you slim it down, I guess? Geppetto...
Well, you've got a lonely old man, some lonely old codger, and he hasn't got any children.
So he makes
kind
one.
Of wishes upon the goddess Sarah, wishes upon a star to make this puppet that he's made come to life. And the star, which is assumedly, I'm assuming that the star is the blue fairy.
Yeah.
This magical, mysterious entity appears and with a wave of her wand
wakes the puppet up,
makes him alive. But the interesting thing is that although he's alive, he's not a real boy. So does that mean that he's not a real boy because he's just a living piece of wood and that he'll be made flesh if he completes the task at hand? Or is it that he's not a real boy because obviously all real boys don't tell lies? Because I never used to tell lies when I was a boy.
Well, it's a moral parable, but I think it's another one of those that's kind of hero story kind of ones, isn't it? Where he can only be real or reach his true potential, if he proves himself.
By not telling lies.
Being honest.
And moral.
Yeah.
In a world which, going by the storyline of Pinocchio, is a pretty f***ed up world.
You did it again!
There's just evil people.
You did it again with the F-bombs.
That's the first I've said this episode.
This episode, yeah. But obviously, I hear a lot more of those prior to this one. And you're already dropping them.
Just breeze over it. I'm sure no one listened. We'll I like to say f*** every now and then. I mean, at least I didn't say
Apologies, everybody. Okay, let's move on back to the actual topic.
What have I told you about feeding trolls?
So, back to the story.
Don't do it.
back to the story. So Pinocchio, then goes where he's not supposed to go, follows a load of boys to a pleasure beach that looks
Pleasure Island.
that looks a bit like Blackpool, where they're actually all being turned into donkeys, jackasses, whatever you want to call them, in a very kind of Circe-esque way. We'll get back to that in a bit. And then he has to prove, he proves he's a good boy after, and then he becomes a real boy.
He makes a few mistakes, and when he tells lies, his nose grows long.
Yeah. So I think everybody else knows the details beyond that. But I can't believe anybody's never heard of Pinocchio. But go on. So where do you want to start?
I don't know. I suppose what is the overarching theme? Is it that... Let's make something up that sounds clever and esoteric quickly. Is it that Pinocchio is the initiate? And that sounds really cool, doesn't it? If I refer to someone as initiate, let's go for like some sort of creepy, like cool esoteric story. So I would imagine that Pinocchio is the initiate, and the blue fairy is like the high priestess style Rider-Waite kind of entity thing, and he's got to prove himself to become worthy to ascend. Otherwise, he'll just get, when he dies, burnt as a pile of wood.
Okay.
So does that mean that Pinocchio is telling you the secrets of mastering death? Or am I just reading into that too much?
Possibly. Because actually he's going for life, isn't he?
Yeah, but like people that like esoteric and occult breakdowns of Disney, they want to be obsessed with either aliens.
Yes.
Because they don't... It doesn't matter what the question is, the answer is always aliens.
Or the blue,
or they want some
or the blue fairy.
Or the blue fairy. Or the blue fairy, of course, is an alien. Pinocchio is an alien. They're all aliens. Either that or they're robot aliens, like in what is that?
Westworld?
No. Sweet Transvestite.
Oh, okay.
Rocky
Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, they're not just aliens, they're robot aliens.
Okay.
Anyway, we're getting off topic.
I was going to say, somehow...
So
how do we get from...
Stop taking us off topic.
How do you get from Pinocchio to robot aliens from a transvestite world?
I don't know, but maybe we should do a Rocky Horror one at some point. That would be pretty cool.
We may have to.
And I tell you what, we'll do that episode on the Green Fairy.
Okay. And
I don't mean doing one about the Green Fairy. I mean drink Green Fairy whilst we do that episode.
So I can kind of get what you're trying to go for there. But yeah, I'm not sure. It's one of those, like all of them, the moral stories, aren't they, where everybody's supposed to be good and obedient, and so he cuts his strings, go off, misbehave, turn into an ass, then obviously has to prove himself because Geppetto's gone looking for him, got himself in.
Yeah.
Then there's a Jonah and the Whale episode, part of it, which never makes any sense to me. I don't quite get how that fits into the story myself. How Jonah and the Whale kind of slipped itself in, I don't know. Maybe it's just supposed to be a mashup of different kind of Christian parables. I don't know. Maybe.
But I suppose it's basically an inanimate object that you've got that looks somewhat human, like a doll or a puppet, and then something is bringing it to life and breathing life into it. So is that kind of, you want to go down the haunted doll type route, or do you want to go down the kind of egregore, tulpa, Gollum, yeah. Not Gollum as in Lord of the Rings. My precious!
No.
Gollum, but Gollum as in like the Jewish
Gollum. Yeah,
Das Gollum.
Das Gollum. How does what? How is that even remotely Jewish? I think that's kind of the opposite of it, actually.
No, I
Which
can't
is
remember
very
where
Disney,
I saw
but I
that.
don't think we should go there either.
I watched this really strange. I watched this strange thing once. I presumed I watched it and I wasn't just dreaming. But basically, it was about these Jewish mystics who created a golem during World War II to kill Nazis and protect them from Nazis.
Okay.
And it was just these Nazi officers would just go, "No, das Golem," and then run away and then get killed by this giant clay man. But anyway, we're going off topic again. You keep bringing us off
No,
topic.
you just wanted to talk about Walt Disney and his
What, that he was a Nazi?
that he was a Nazi.
I don't think so.
I think that's what you're trying to do to me. You're setting me up to go and say shit like that. No,
No, if you want me to set you up, I'll set you up.
no, let's.
How does one breathe life into an inanimate object? So if I was to make a wooden doll, how would you bring that to life?
Oh, that really is setting me up. Why would you do that to me?
Well, for a start, do you think it's possible?
Of course it's possible.
And have you ever done it? In this life or any other?
Not in this one. And at least I don't think I have. I put other things in wood. But I don't like dolls. They tend to creep me out. You know how I feel about those. Especially those proper French marionette kind of types, which I imagine is what he was.
Yeah, he was a marionette, wasn't
Yeah, so you're kind of like, oh no, they're well creepy. Not interested in that. But yeah, breathing life into wood is... Oh, in one part it's, oh dear, what's he about to do? I've set him off.
Sorry,
now.
you were talking about breathing life into wood.
Oh my
and I got
god.
distracted.
How very juvenile of you.
What do you mean?
Is that when we now start to talk about his wooden nose growing when he tells lies? Like, come on, Liam. This is for the from our
isn't
fans.
it? this is for after the watershed. Come on, you were explaining how to breathe life into a puppet or other inanimate object. I'd really like one of those Clogsworths from Beauty and the Beast. You know, the little clock
Of
man.
course you'd want another
I really
clock.
want one.
Oh,
he's brilliant. I love him.
But would
How does one go about doing it, Chris? Tell me, Super Witch.
No, you get called Super Witch. I'm not the Super Witch. I'm the one that defends the Super Witch.
So you're like the Super Witch's super assistant.
Super assistant, yeah. Okay.
Or supervisor.
Supervisor, trying to control you. Yeah. So
You're like my handler. Or is it my carer?
Yeah, carer's probably the better phrase. Anyway, we're off topic again. This is supposed to be one of the serious ones, and you're not making it very serious.
Okay, breathe life into a doll. How'd you do it?
Go. You do it then. You're that clever.
No, because I asked you.
No. So with golems...
I'm supposed to be the host, hence why I do the creepy intro. And I ask you the questions, you answer the questions, and then I pretend like I knew it the whole time.
Well, they work on the same principle. With golem, obviously, it's a magical word stuffed within. Grow up, you child. Stuffed within a big clay man. Whereas what Pinocchio is probably toying more with is that kind of welcoming a nature spirit directly into a living vessel. Living vessel being because the wood obviously will still retain some of its natural essence even when it's cut down.
So you're saying the blue fairy cheated and she just stuck some other spirit in the doll?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Making one. Is that because she's a demiurge and she can't make the real thing, only just manipulate it?
I would say so.
Okay. That blue fairy ain't all she's cracked up to be, that's what you're saying.
I'm saying she's a cheat. She's a cheat. Oh. Because the fairies are already bad at that, aren't they? Or that's
She,
a scarier one. What if Pinocchio is a changeling in a wooden box? How do you feel about
poor
that?
Pinocchio.
Poor
Well,
Pinocchio.
I don't know. I find Pinocchio quite sweet, and I think changelings can be quite sweet, but also there's a little bit of a creepier vibe about changelings,
Yeah, but the blue fairy put it in. So,
I
with a
suppose.
alien blue face.
I think that blue fairy's working some magic on me because I can't quite remember whether you've answered the question. Listeners, has he answered the question?
What do you want me to say, Liam? Because I think
Well, I want you to say how you would breathe life into a doll or a marionette puppet
okay.
because I get lonely. Winter's coming. I get lonely on these cold, lonely
What?
nights.
Just in case it doesn't please you, and therefore you can just throw him on as firewood. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not that nasty. I wouldn't throw
Okay.
Pinocchio on as firewood.
It depends on what level you want to do it. The easiest way would be to start with the creation of an homunculus or something like that, thought form, and then giving it a place to live. And the place to live would be the wood. The nice thing about using wood is obviously that because it was once living, it is designed for holding a living energy. Very different to trying to put something into stone, for example. Because although they have prism-like experience of how they can hold energy, it's very different to actually seating. Potentially, it depends. I'm going down an animism kind of route, and it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on what you're planning on actually getting me to say.
So well, okay, so that's interesting if you're taking an animism route. So with animism, obviously, it's the belief that there's a spirit within everything. So if you've got something that's naturally occurring like wood,
Yeah.
that's already got life to it and a spirit, is there a difference with that and a synthetic thing? So for example, if you wanted to breathe life into a doll, and you made a marionette doll out of pine wood or something like that, would it be easier to breathe life into that? Or if I went and got one of those £1,000 dolls from dollsclub.com, not a sponsor of ours, by the way, to keep me, warm on these cold winter nights, would it be easier to put it into the pine wood or into one of these silicon dolls?
At the end of the day, it will still hold an energy. It all comes down to what it's capable of holding. What I'm trying to say is whether or not you're actually using the original spirit of the
Yeah.
living. I'm not talking necessarily about that. The easy part would be it's already what I mean is it's already held a spirit, and therefore putting a new one in its dead body is an easier process in some ways, um, because it's already pre-programmed in order to live, to grow, to change. So in that aspect, it seems similar. Um,
Well, would you be breathing life into it though? Because I think mostly people would be thinking in terms of with a spirit, if you are going down an animistic route or not an animistic route, then it's sentience, I suppose, isn't it?
yeah,
Because if the wood's already got a spirit in, then that's probably not going to be good enough for the average person. They want something that they can interact with that, Pinocchio wants to be a real boy and he's able to move around, move about and stuff. So it's kind of how would you go about doing that? Because Pinocchio was basically, if you can say, designed to keep, well, it was basically supposed to be to keep the old man company, wasn't it? A son, essentially, is what he wanted, a kid.
yeah,
So, you're talking about companionship, that kind of thing. Whereas when you're talking about egregore creation and spirit creation, normally you're talking about them being a servitor, an aid, something that you make breathe life into to serve you, to do something very specific, a specific job. So really, I think it's kind of a case of the differences in approach for something like that and the complexity. If you're trying to create another human but one made out of wood, then that's going to be a lot difficult, or a lot more difficult than creating a servitor and having that live within
Exactly. But mainly,
the
mainly
puppet.
because there's the generalized limitation that comes with servitors homunculus, is the whole point that it's not necessarily supposed to grow outside of its balance, where
Yeah.
outside of its purpose. Whereas, so the question is really whether or not Pinocchio is fulfilling its purpose, and that's the whole point of one, is that she's programmed it in order to become a real boy when it's reached a maturity, and by that being is able to the part of me that makes it think that maybe it's a converted nature spirit part, that makes me want to go down that kind of route when talking about Pinocchio, is the fact that it has that very kind of Greek dryad kind of behaviour about it, the going, the running around and wanting to drink beer and smoke cigars um, and make a general ass of themselves, like it was in Pleasure Island or whatever it was called. Is that is very kind of fawn behaviour, isn't it? Or kind of that nature spirit kind of feel to that kind of wildness, for lack of a better phrase, I guess.
Mm.
Um, it really depends on what you're trying to achieve, I guess. Obviously, with that, he wishes
He
hard
wants
enough
a
that
kid,
he
doesn't
wants a
he? He,
kid.
he wants a kid.
Um, the potential result of that is that if he didn't learn and didn't turn into a real boy, then essentially what he's got is a permanent child and a kind of immortal child, hasn't he? In that
Like
sense,
from the, what is it, Interview with a Vampire, that
yeah.
film where they make a vampire child and she never grows up.
Which is potentially what they would have got if he didn't become a real boy. You know,
Yeah.
like it does have the potential to have gone that way if you were comparing but that comes down to a question of morality and soul, doesn't it? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that one.
It's interesting, because imagine you substituted, if you're talking about
Hmm.
animism. Now, artificial intelligence is becoming more and more advanced. Imagine a toy manufacturer, much like if you ever watched that film AI where they have that robot bear.
Yeah.
Imagine if Disney in the year 2050 or something like that made a robot Pinocchio for a child. That's basically a child's toy that's a companion for that child and behaves and walks and talks. Imagine as a witch or a magician or a magical practitioner breathing life into that,
Yeah.
the connotations of that.
It's one of those things. It's like I said, what is the point of wanting to create something that is going to learn to that extent? Which is, like I say, is the odd part if you compare them to a servitor or an egregore or anything like that, where it's not designed to outgrow its purpose. Whereas if you're putting something, like you say, that has this kind of AI capacity of learning and growing and becoming its own thing, I don't know, is that more
Well, I
dangerous?
think I think the average listener would think of it in terms of, because obviously when we're talking about creating spirits, you're normally talking about spirits and spirit forms. So the doll or the puppet or whatever you're housing that in isn't going to move around the room.
No.
The spirit can, and it can in spirit form, but it's not actually going to jump up out of its box and start moving around the room. Whereas if you're talking about creating something with the capacity of doing that, it would take a very, very advanced practitioner, because that means rewriting the laws of physics, essentially,
Yes,
in order to make that happen. Which I'm not saying isn't possible, but
of
I think
course.
that goes into um, realms outside of the scope of what we're normally used to dealing with on this podcast, so we'll leave it there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
However, if you're talking about the idea of homunculus, so you're talking about taking a living thing and as it's growing, manipulating it to the point that it's actually become a new thing. And that's a scary thing that psychologists can deal with
yeah.
sometimes when it comes to, children, experiments being done on children as they've developed to try and tinker around with them, that kind of thing.
The nature-nurture principles.
Yeah, that's that sort of thing. But it's obviously magical practitioners have been doing that for a very, very long time. And there are reasons for why someone would do that. Most common, the reasons I see is because it's an experiment.
Well,
I
yeah,
think when it comes to servitors and spirits like that, then you're either going to work with a spirit that's already in existence, or you're going to want to create one for a very, very specific purpose. Whereas homunculus type style things seems more like mad scientist.
yeah. But it's still parameters though, isn't it? It's that limit of you're not wanting it to progress necessarily beyond you. Whereas, like what you said at the beginning with the potential of, is it the birth of a deity or something like that? It's ascension. That is starting to then kind of go to beyond, again, probably beyond the scope of No Holds Barred. But, you have the potential there of, would you go in that route in order to create a god? You get a lot of it, particularly, sowing teeth and humans being born, kind of Greek stories like that. You always have that kind of going from the organic.
Yeah.
It's never in a position where you kind of breathe life into stone. It's very rare that is part of the story, part of the. So I don't know how possible is that suggesting, as in within the current laws of physics is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, I'm not entirely sure how many people have attempted to do that. I mean, we come across egregores and stuff like that all the time, and you will find spirits attached to dolls and puppets that will be able to move the doll about. I mean, look at that Annabelle doll from the Warrens exhibit. That was said to have been, a spirit attached to it can move it about and change location. But it's not like a robot dog or something like that, which actually moves around in front of you and talks to you and stuff like that, like Pinocchio does. So that's different again. What about the wishing upon a star? Because, of course, that's kind of an evocation, isn't it? Do you think that he wished upon the star and expected it to work? Why do you think that did work, and what are the parallels? Because, of course, he obviously was a sad, lonely old man, and he must have put a lot of emotion into that wish.
Yeah, you've got one of those.
Because is intention everything, Chris? Isn't that what they say? Intention is everything.
Don't.
We got 1 minute left.
It's yeah, we're not going to be able to.
It would be sad to leave it on intention isn't everything.
No. It's in this. It's a petition, isn't it? In that, it's a situation you're asking someone else to provide both the power and the focus of the means beyond the intention that they've put in. So actually, the work's not being done necessarily by Geppetto, other than creating the vessel itself. The rest of the work is being necessarily done by the Blue Fairy, which, like I said, goes down that kind of fey she route, because they always love to depict those as blue, don't they, and strange colours. But yeah, no, I think a large part of it is his wish, his desire is there. Whether or not I would call that necessary intention. Intention suggests that he actually knows what he's doing.
Right. Well, I'm going to have to cut you off there because we are now about to end the normal podcast. So goodbye, everyone.
join you on the Patreon if we're hoping to.
Well, they should be listening now on the Patreon, so if you can listen on the Patreon, then we'll start talking about some slightly deeper stuff, maybe. But yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
finish your point, if you remember what it was still.